Outside of the college football playoff, the transfer portal remains the hottest topic across the college football universe, and for good reason. I have done this podcast for 6+ years, have done thousands of episodes, and I have to say I may have gotten the hottest take I have ever received in the history of this podcast. It involves BYU football. It involves the perceptions of what level of success certain people have for the BYU football program. And yes, it involves the transfer portal. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. All right. I mentioned I got the best hot take, or maybe the hottest take I've ever gotten in the history of this podcast, and we'll get to it momentarily. But I want to start off with why I think is a very, very nice addition to the BYU transfer portal run right now, and that is Kyle Sfarcioc out of Southern Utah University. Now, who is Kyle Sfarcioc, you're probably asking? Well, good thing you asked. He's a 3-year starter for SUU, has been a very, very capable player down there for the Thunderbirds, helped SUU this past season really have I think, a very good offensive season. They ran for north of 2,500 yards as a football program while going 7-5 in the UAC, the United Athletic Conference, down there in Cedar City. More importantly, they helped Targi Lamson run for 1,922 yards and 23 touchdowns. Phenomenal numbers for a really, really good running back in Lamson. Some of you may recall him from his days playing for Timpview High School here in Utah Valley. The bigger point to be made here is Kyle Sfarcioc was part of an offensive line that helped Southern Utah, helped Targi Lamson get to nearly 2,000 yards, and more importantly, over 2,500 yards rushing as an offensive line. There is a resume there that screams this is a guy who I think has accomplished everything that he probably can accomplish at the FCS level, and he's now taking the bet on himself to jump up to the FBS and the Power 4 level to see what he can show to NFL scouts to hopefully continue his playing career beyond next season. Yes, he is a redshirt junior. He has 1 year to come in and play for the BYU football program, and you've got to think that BYU is looking at it as he could be a potential starter for BYU next year. I think offensive tackle remains a question mark for BYU football, and there's zero doubt about that. They need to get some guys in because they're losing both of their tackles this year, speaking of Caleb Etienne, as well as Braden Keim. But our good friend Connor Pay, he's also moving on. So there are at least 3 positions on that offensive line that are going to be missing their starters from this past year. You need to have talent come in and replace that. And a guy like Kyle Sfarcioc, I think, absolutely fits the bill of what BYU needs along this offensive line. They will still continue to chase an offensive tackle because I think Andrew Gentry, for example, is absolutely still in the mix with BYU, and I would think BYU would do well to bring him in, but we'll cover that when it comes, if it comes. That brings me to this hot take that was sent in. Now, I don't get a lot of emails these days, but you can feel free to reach out via email with the show anytime. I get a lot of DMs, a lot of stuff on Instagram. You guys reach out via our Locked On Cougars Insider group because you can do that via text message. Trust me, there's a lot of ways to get in touch with the show, but I don't get a lot of emails these days, but I got one, and we're going to read it. This came from Bill, and it's quite the take here. So here we go. Hi, Jake. Big fan of the show. Appreciate all you do for BYU fans. I am reaching out to express my concerns about BYU not being more of a force in the transfer portal. I saw that BYU football got a commitment from a lineman at SUU. I have to say that I am concerned if that's the level of player BYU can attract in the transfer portal. Until they are able to compete for the best talent available, I am afraid I will have to say I remain convinced that BYU is not serious about competing on a national level, and the not was capitalized. So you know how serious they're with this take. Not serious about competing on a national level. Can you explain why I should think otherwise? Thanks for hearing me out. Signed, Bill. All right, Bill. I will let you know why I think you're wrong about that. BYU has had a nice run here, especially during their Big 12 era, the 2 seasons so far that BYU's competed at this level, the Power 4 level, with using FCS talent. You may think this lineman, Kyle Sfarcioc, is not, in your mind, worthy of coming to BYU and being a part of the program. The coaches say otherwise. They offered him a scholarship. He took him up on it, and he's going to be here at BYU. Let me also add this. BYU starting right guard this year is another former Southern Utah transfer in Austin Leausa. Now, he obviously has been in and out of the lineup due to some injury concerns, but he is a fellow FCS transfer. Other guys who are FCS players that, by your metric here, are, quote, not worthy. I'm putting words in your mouth, I guess, by saying not worthy. You think that that's the level of player that's the only level BYU can attract. They're not serious about competing on a national level. Okay, let's look at guys who have had success transferring over from BYU from the FCS level. Eddie Heckard, Camden Garrett, BYU starting cornerbacks last season, both FCS players. This year, Mark Collins, one of those cornerbacks that started for BYU all season long, also an FCS player. Oh, Jack Kelly, who I believe is BYU's single best. I'm dead serious about this. Single best NFL prospect on BYU's defense, Jack Kelly, former FCS player. I'm going to have to say, Bill, if that is the level you were going to hold BYU to, BYU football, I guess I should say, to, you're not going to be a very happy BYU fan. I'm just going to call it out for what it is right now. I do think part of this is being carried over from the success that Kevin Young is having with BYU basketball. When you sign the top-rated prospect in the college basketball universe, yes, I understand that there is going to be a level that some people think that BYU football should be matching when it comes to BYU basketball. But here's the other thing about this. BYU is competing at a national level. Might I remind you that BYU just went 10-2 with a chance to go to 11-2 next week when they take on the Colorado Buffaloes. BYU's over-under win total this season was 4.5 wins. They won 5 games this season to go and miss out on a bowl game. And trust me, the howling that was going on when BYU suffered a 7-game losing streak to finish that season, trust me, it was wild. My DMs, my emails, all that stuff, absolutely wild with all kinds of hot takes. And for you, essentially a year later, to go out and say that an FCS player of Kyle Sfarcioc's level, or his the level he's playing at, is if that's the only level that BYU can attract, I'm going to say that BYU is not serious about competing on a national level. Okay. If I'm to take you seriously, and I can say that this could be a one-off, I can admit that, but I've got people in my insider group. I have a couple of DMs. I've had other people reach out who've expressed similar type concerns about this, about different players, might I add. But if an FCS player is not, quote, not good enough to play at BYU, man, you're going to want to go root for another football program. You're going to want to seek out Oregon, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State. Find one of those big dogs who are spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars and root for them. BYU is a unique university. I don't think I'm preaching anything that is revolutionary when I say this. BYU is a unique place. And I think from the Board of Trustees, that involves the First Presidency, the Quorum of the 12 from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that Board of Trustees on down to the university president, C. Shane Reese, the advancement vice president, Keith Vorkink, who oversees BYU athletics, on to athletic director Tom Homo, filtering down through the athletic department hierarchy to Kalani Sitake, his coaching staff, Aaron Roderick, Jay Hill as his coordinators, Kelly Papinga as well, then down to the other assistant coaches and even the players. I think BYU has a very good sense of who they are and where they stand in the college football universe. Would they like to be one of those big dogs one day? Yes, absolutely. I think they aspire to get back to winning national titles. BYU has a national title in its trophy case down there in Legacy Hall. Great. Aspire to that. But 2 years into the toughest level of football BYU's ever competed against, and to have that take from Bill there sounds pretty elitist and pretty snobbish to be turning your nose up at talent that's coming into BYU that the track record suggests the guys of his ilk, speaking of Sfarcioc here, and the other guys who have come before him through BYU have proven that they can be pretty high level, if not star players for BYU. Maybe just a bit too out over your skis on that take. Maybe just a little bit. Let's rein it in a little bit here. Let's understand where BYU's at right now. They have a double-digit win season. They are one of 18 teams this year out of 134 at the FBS level that has 10 plus wins next to their name with a chance to add another one next week and cap off what I think is an absolutely remarkable season. And once again, to use that expression, to be turning your nose up at the level of talent that you perceive Kyle Sfarcioc to be, man, tough sled. And that's a standard I think is impossible. I mean, truly impossible for BYU to clear at that point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And maybe it is a carryover from BYU basketball. And maybe I'm up in the night, but man, I thought that was a quite hot take that, man, I don't agree with it. Point blank, I do not agree with that take because I think the FCS track record, because there's talent at the FCS level. Trust me, there are FCS guys up and down that transfer portal market that are getting high level NIL deals to come and play at the Power 4 level. And to denigrate a guy that's going to be one of your own, to also use another expression, that's a tough pill to swallow for me as a podcaster and a guy who breaks down BYU on a daily basis. All right, so we'll just leave that there. Let me know what you think. Is Bill right? Is BYU living beneath their station, I guess, in a way, as a college football program? I welcome your feedback on that. All right. We're going to flip over to basketball, though. I want to talk about BYU as they wrap up the non-conference slated games this evening. I've got some thoughts on where things stand for BYU basketball as they get ready for Big 12 play. And now they're going to have 10 plus days off before they get back on the hardwoods after tonight's game against Florida A&M. What can we learn from tonight's game against what I perceive to be an overmatched team that can both build confidence and maybe give some concerns or allay some concerns about BYU basketball? We'll delve into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends, a new friend over at Rocket Money. Of course, all of us want to save money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about while you're paying for twice? Well, I can tell you that, but that's happened to me. All of us don't want to be wasting money, and some of us out there may have signed up for a subscription, forgot about it, and then just keeps hitting our credit card, and for whatever reason, we haven't caught it yet. Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It's a great way to help you get to your financial goals. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. And the best part is Rocket Money has over 5 million users, has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For all of us, the best features probably include that subscription tracker. Use it to cancel your services when you're not needing them. And the best part is you can save a ton along the way. Also, with their goals feature, you can set automatically aside money for your future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. They're going to make it as simple as possible for you guys. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with our friends at Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon to get started today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, just to remind you guys, it's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That's when you bring people together at live events. The experience is that much better. And of course, it can be the perfect gift. Some of you may be scrambling to find the perfect gift for that person that's hard to buy for. Well, Game Time might have that option for you guys. Whether it's a sporting event, their favorite comedian, a concert, or a theater show that they want to go see, Game Time has got the tickets for you guys, and more important, they've got an incredible Game Time Picks feature. We'll filter through all the fluff of the thousands of other tickets, find the right options for you, and get you the best seats possible to the events you want to go to. They also have the best coverage in the ticket gaming industry. They have flexible customer service policies, including lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, even job loss protection. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Create that account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. And of course, as they like to say, what time is it? It's game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. All right, so BYU basketball hosts Florida A&M at the Marriott Center tonight. It is the final of BYU's non-conference games, and it's crazy to think about this. BYU plays tonight. They will not play again until December 31st. That's New Year's Eve when they open Big 12 play against Arizona State. I asked Kevin Young after the Wyoming game last Saturday, are you concerned about the long layoff here with just one game, essentially in more than 2 weeks leading up to Big 12 play? He says, I'm worried about rust setting in after 2 days because he comes from the NBA world where if you take more than 2 days off in the NBA, there's like a all-star break or something's wrong with your schedule. He understands what it's going to take to keep BYU engaged through this holiday break. And I'm sure the players themselves being able to go and spend time with their family, that's awesome for them. But at the same time, they have got a really, really tough schedule upcoming when the Big 12 tips off. They are going to face the toughest schedule, quite frankly, I think BYU basketball has ever faced, because you look at what the Big 12 has out there, may not have won, speaking of the league itself, some of the non-conference games they would have liked to have, and obviously BYU didn't hold up their end of the bargain in that Big East Big 12 challenge by getting absolutely blitzed by Providence out there in Rhode Island. But the bigger point to be made here is BYU comes to their non-conference schedule, and I frankly still have questions about this BYU lineup. Is it Big 12 caliber? Can it finish middle of the table in the Big 12 this year? Middle of the table in the Big 12 is likely to get you in the big dance, putting you in the NCAA tournament come March. But I just don't feel like I've got a real good sense right now about how good this BYU team is. Now, part of that's due to injury. You lose guys like Egor, Demin to an ankle. Was it ankle or leg? Regardless, it was an injury. It's kept him out, and he will not play, I don't think, until BYU takes on Arizona State. And I hope it's no further than that. Also, we just saw this past game against Wyoming. You have Richie Saunders take it looked like a shoulder to the face. It busted up his lip, and he obviously suffered a concussion. And Kevin Young said during media availability this week, if there's any question about his availability and concerns about him being on the court against Florida A&M, they will opt to rest him. That screams to me that you're not going to see Richie Saunders tonight. So those are two starters for the BYU basketball program who are not going to be on the court tonight. So what from the Florida A&M game can help? This is from my perspective, maybe you as well. What can it help build confidence in this BYU team? Well, one thing, I want to see how some of these other guys who are giving an opportunity show what they're capable of. I look at Mboup Mag. He had a breakout performance after Richie Saunders got injured against Wyoming and proved himself to be a rotation piece, I think, at minimum. If he truly wants to enter the rotation and be a bigger part of BYU's lineup, he's got to follow that up with a good game tonight against Florida A&M. And yes, I understand that FAMU is an overmatched opponent. They got beat by 30 the other night by Utah. So this is a game BYU should win fairly comfortably. But I want to see a guy like Mboup Mag go out there and show what he's capable of and show that he can back up what he did against Wyoming the next game. You can't have one big game and then disappear. That won't cut it, especially when it comes to the level of play that Kevin Young wants from this BYU basketball team. I also want to see what guys like a Mihailo Bošković, I want to see more from him. I think he has got all the talent to be a great two-way player for BYU. He's got all the length, the size, the three-point shooting ability to be that stretch four that BYU absolutely needs in their lineup. We need to see more from him, more consistent play from him. That's the number one thing. I think that Keba Keita and Fousseyni Traore continue to show that they are more than capable, despite not being the tallest guys on the court. They can hold down the fort in the middle. So I'm not as concerned about them, but I want to see what Dallin Hall can do as the floor general we believe he is for BYU basketball. Can a guy like Elijah Crawford, taking those backup number one minutes, speaking of the point guard role, can he continue to impress? Can Dawson Baker continue his strong run of form? I want to see all these guys go out there and prove that they have the consistency that you crave from a lineup that's going to have to be very consistent to compete in the Big 12. There are going to be nights they're going to struggle in Big 12 play. That's part of basketball. There are nights guys are just off. And as a team, you're going to struggle on those nights. But for Cannon Catchings, for example, Kevin Young said it this week, I want to see him shoot more catch and shoot threes. He says the efficiency numbers, and trust me, Kevin Young, he is all about the numbers. He is always analyzing efficiency numbers and the like. And he said that when Cannon Catchings catches the ball, and what I mean by catch and shoot, it means shooting the ball without dribbling. He said when Cannon Catchings does the catch and shoot, his efficiency number is way higher than when he takes a dribble or tries to dribble himself into that shot. He said the efficiency numbers go down significantly. So I want to see guys like a Cannon Catchings do as his coach told the media and accomplish what he's being assigned to accomplish. So that's what I'm looking for from BYU basketball tonight. I just want to see them go out there and play better across the board and essentially make the decision hard on Kevin Young as to who the lineup is going to be come Big 12 play. The other thing Kevin Young said is we asked him, have you kind of settled on who you think your rotation is going to be? He says, no, I haven't. He said, I would like to at this point. He said, I would have liked to have it said a while ago, but he said the injuries, most notably probably to Egor Demin, as well as what Dallin Hall dealt with earlier on in the season, and then this most recent injury to Richie Saunders, I think it's precluded him from really getting a real strong look at what he wants to see from his rotation. So that rotation going into Big 12 play may remain at 10 or 11 guys when ideally it's probably 7 or 8. So that's what's on the table tonight, is for essentially everybody that's available to play in this matchup to go out there and prove themselves to Kevin Young as to why they should be a bigger factor when it comes to Big 12 play. Because I think we already know what we've got with Egor Demin. I know what we got with Richie Saunders. So missing them opens up opportunities for other guys. Can you go out there and seize the moment and essentially force the coaches to say, you know what? This young man, he deserves a longer look, and he needs to be on the court more often for us. That's what I'm looking for as BYU takes on Florida A&M. And it's nothing against, are they the Rattlers, I think? It's nothing against Florida A&M, but we hear from coaches all the time. This game's more about us than it is about them. And in this case, it absolutely is more about BYU than it is about Florida A&M. Now, BYU basketball also added a new name, and he's not necessarily a name that's going to surprise you guys because he has been committed to BYU for quite some time, but he is finally officially a member of the BYU basketball program. What is BYU going to get from Khadim Mboup? And I think I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, once again, feel free to correct me, but what are they getting in this young man as he comes into the BYU basketball program? We'll delve into that next as we wrap up this edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at the College Football Playoff. You've been waiting all season long for this 12-team edition to start, and it gets started tonight. But more importantly, you can be assured it's bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. And TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins tomorrow, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 9 a.m. Mountain Time. For those of you here in Utah, leading into their first match with the SMU Mustangs taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon Eastern. That's 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Then they'll follow it up with the Clemson Tigers taking on the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 2 o'clock Mountain. Don't miss a moment of the action to watch the College Football Playoff presented by our friends over at Allstate. It's live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Just a shameless plug for you guys to join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get live up-to-the-minute updates of what I'm hearing about BYU sports. Get the insider scoop of what I'm hearing from my sources out there. Get all of it coming to your phone in the form of a text message. The best part is it's just $5 a month to get that access. But more importantly, before you have to pay anything, you get a 14-day free trial. Click the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcast, and join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, some of you may have seen this as well. They got officially the word that Khadim Mboup has officially joined the BYU basketball program. Now, there was some question if he may ultimately enroll at BYU, because remember when school started back in September, he was not enrolled at BYU. We found out later that he had officially enrolled at Utah Prep Academy, which is where AJ DeBonce is currently playing down there in southern Utah. He was essentially catching up and finishing up his paperwork to get everything squared away to be able to enroll at BYU, speaking of Mboup here. Now that he's enrolled at the midseason point, just before Big 12 play starts, is there any chance he plays a role with BYU? I would say no at this point, because I just talked about it. BYU's lineup right now is already fairly deep and fairly robust. And I think a guy like Mboup faces very long odds of being able to come in and essentially still a rotation spot away from somebody on what is very short notice. But I will just say this. I think that Mboup is a very, very nice addition to the BYU basketball program. And I think that given time, he is going to prove to be, I think, a very, very good basketball player. He has spent time at the NBA Academy in Africa, which essentially what the NBA Academy in Africa is meant to do is it's meant to bring the best talent on the continent of Africa and essentially hone their craft and allow them to become high-level basketball players, and in theory, because it's being sponsored by the NBA, to bolster the ranks of the NBA down the road. Well, Mboup is part of the early goings of this academy, and with a guy like Kevin Young, who's running a very NBA-esque operation with the BYU basketball program, if he can come in and prove what he did at the NBA Academy in Africa, translates over to the Power 5, I guess in college basketball, Power 5 level, and more importantly, he has success at BYU, there's no reason to think that he can't go on to a very, very robust professional career, but that's probably not going to happen until next year. So some of you may have been wondering, okay, what can he do for BYU right now? I'm just going to say, I wouldn't expect anything from him. I think he's going to redshirt this year. I think that's really the best case scenario here. He gets now to practice with the team, start to get ingrained in what BYU's doing offensively and defensively. And you look at the measurables and what this young man has proven already in his playing career. He is barely 18 years old. He's 6'9". There was a video that Will Voigt, one of the assistant coaches at BYU, posted of him busting a backboard on a dunk. So you know he's got force, you know he's got hops, you know he's got the athleticism. So I really think this is a very nice addition to the BYU lineup, even if it's not going to be something that's going to impact BYU this season. Because I really do think that Mboup is going to redshirt this year, and then he'll have to fight his way into the rotation next year. But it's kind of this day and age of college sports. Every year seems to be its own unique thing. And I think Mboup absolutely can be a part of the mix going forward for BYU basketball. And quite frankly, I hope he proves to be everything that BYU hopes he can be. He's got length. He's got athleticism. He shows, if you look at the highlight reels, he shows a really, really nice, feel for the game in terms of understanding where to go with the ball, when to go with it, when to look for his own shot, when to lay it off for his teammates. And those are highlight reels. I get all that because you can hide things, but I think Kevin Young and his staff, they're pretty ingrained in the recruiting spheres. And to bring a guy like this all the way over from the NBA Academy in Africa and to stand by him when he needed to finish up coursework and go to a prep academy for a semester before finally getting to BYU, I think that screams that BYU, they know what they've got in a guy like Khadim Mboup. And hopefully, fingers crossed, their bet on this young man pays off in spades down the road for the BYU basketball program. All right. I think it's enough grandstanding for one day. Hope you guys have had a fantastic week. It is Christmas season. We will continue to podcast throughout the week next week. I am planning on doing, we're going to have a Christmas special with the Locked On Big 12 squad. So get ready for that. That's going to be absolutely wild. I have no idea whatever is going to come out of that show, but with a Christmas special, get ready for that. We'll have full editions, obviously, leading up to the game against Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. So plenty of coverage to come. But once again, a big thank you as always for your support. Please share this with your family and friends. If you're out at Christmas parties this time of year, let them know that this podcast exists. Word of mouth is absolutely crucial to the continued growth of this podcast. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.